I would like to add my welcome to Troy's for those of you warriors who did not see snow and see an end to your travels. Way to go. Congratulations on being here. That's awesome. Also, as Troy said, welcome to those of you who are at home on the internet. Glad to have you here. Very grateful to have that kind of technology where the family can still be together in spite of this snow. Go God. Hey, I'm pretty stoked right now about this little basketball tournament that's going on around the country. The NCAA Finals is made up of tons of players and coaches and parents and family and friends that have gathered not only in Kansas City but in regional areas across the country, filled with hope that their team is going to win. You're going to get to the Final Four, last two, and then ultimately be the champion. Interestingly enough, however, many who came with some reasonable hope have had the hope go from here to a crash and are going home with a very different feeling than they came. Gonzaga. Ow. Ow. Georgetown. Ow. There's a few close to home that have some owls going on as well. I understand that there's a little basketball game going on this afternoon, so I figured I'd go ahead and wave my white flag as a team that's probably going to be going home without much hope after this afternoon. Rock chalk, you know. I did not say that for all of you who live in North Carolina. That was a figment of your imagination. The thing I like about the NCAA tournament being right around Palm Sunday week and Holy Week this week is that it illustrates what really did happen a couple of centuries ago, or actually a bunch of centuries, a couple of millennia ago, there in Jerusalem. Just like K-State, just like Mizzou came to this place ready to see a little more action, a lot of people that gathered around Jesus that day when he came into Jerusalem were looking for a whole lot more action. Their hope was out the roof. But as you know, their joy and their hope got cut short. What was that about? It's going to be an important question for us to ask and answer today because we all have those surges in our life when hope starts to do this and then things happen. Hope's a powerful emotion. It's a gift that God's given us. We're going to look at it today and how we can hold on to it. As Dan said, we're kicking off a series called Resurrection. We're going to see that the resurrection is the center of our hope. Go ahead, grab your notes, wave them at me, and let's fill in the big idea of the series. Here it is. Jesus majors in resurrection. We could almost stop right there. Jesus majors in resurrection. He doesn't minor in it. He didn't get a couple of extra credits in it. He majors in resurrection. What is resurrection? He brings life out of death. Brings life out of death. Dead things he brings life to. Spiritually, emotionally, physically. Jesus is in the business. That's his major, bringing life out of death. Here's the application question for all of us to ask throughout the whole series. Is your life being resurrected? Is your life being resurrected? Because, hey, if it's not, we're missing something. If he majors in resurrection and we're not experiencing it, we're missing something. In other words, are your hurts, and everybody has hurts, are your hurts being healed? Are your fears being overcome? Are your dreams being lived? That's life coming out of death that he brings, and we can have it all. Let's read this passage from 1 Peter 1:3 together. You ready? Let's do this nice and loud. In his great mercy, God has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. The resurrection is the source of our hope. Now, do me a favor, if you would, and circle that phrase, living hope. It's not a dead hope. It's not a comatose hope. It's not a lost hope. It's a living, vibrant, active hope. Resurrection is the source of that hope. It's a confident expectation that God is going to win through any circumstance. Dan, did you hear the confidence in his voice earlier about his mom? Well, if you don't know yet, Dan's mother, on Wednesday night of this past week, a woman who has been struggling with Parkinson's for 10 years, not able to freely walk, been struggling with cancer the last couple, is now dancing. She's free. She's home. She's home. Funeral was yesterday. Dan is doing very well. Family's doing very well. Why? Because of this beautiful gift we have called hope. Now, here's the big idea of this morning. You ready? Let's write it in the blank. Jesus' resurrection is your, Pastor Dan's, mine, all of ours, only hope for personal resurrection. And never let go of this hope. He's our only source. The resurrection is our only source of personal resurrection, so we can never let go of this hope. Why put that in there that we can never let go of this hope? Because we have an enemy who's after our hope. He wants to grab that hope, or that certain expectation that God's going to win. Because if he gets our hope, he gets us. If he gets our hope, we're done. We're ineffective. We're almost neutral or backwards. Right? He's got two major strategies for taking our hope. The first one is very subtle. The first one is just an outright war against our lives. The first one's subtle. He just wants to misdirect our hope to be in anything but him. And he does it in a very crafty way. We're going to look at that as we unpack the rest of our time this morning. But in those times when the misdirection doesn't work, he just wants to outright smother it with life circumstances to the point where we suffocate spiritually and we give up. And we're going to look at both of those today and how hope can win. Here's the first point. Keep your hope in Jesus alone. Keep your hope in Jesus alone. Satan's going to want to misdirect your hope into other things. Jesus says, keep it in me alone. This reminds me of the first Star Wars that came out. It's called A New Hope. It was actually number 4, but I was in grade school when the thing came out. And Princess Leia leaves a message for Obi-Wan Kenobi, and she says, help us, Obi-Wan. And then what did she say? You're our only hope. Powerful statement. You're our only hope. Well, Jesus had some pretty frank conversations with his followers, saying to them, I'm your only hope. Let's get that squared away because I don't want you to miss out on how important that is. Many of you know that Palm Sunday, the day that we're celebrating today, was preceded by another resurrection. Lazarus was resurrected from the dead. Lazarus was dead. Jesus came into town, healed him. What you may not know is that miracle, that resurrection, caused the stir of Palm Sunday, a very big deal. Jesus, knowing that was going to happen, grabs the people that he's been closest to. Lazarus and his 2 sisters, Mary and Martha, were very close friends of his. And he has a very direct conversation with Martha right before it all breaks down. And here's what he said, and he's saying it to us. We can fill our own names in here. He says, I'm the resurrection and the life. I am, he says. Everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this, Martha? Do you believe this, Evan? Do you believe this? Just put in your name all the way across the room. Do you believe this? He's making it personal. Why? Because he knows that circumstances are going to come where the enemy wants to either misdirect or smother your hope. And he's going, hey, right here, is it me? It's a hope check. Here's what happened. Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. And then things start to break loose. John 13, starting at verse 12. A large crowd of Passover visitors took palm branches and went down the road to meet him. They shouted, praise God, blessings on the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Many in the crowd had seen Jesus call Lazarus from the tomb, raising him from the dead, and they were telling others about it. And that was the reason so many went out to meet him. Now, if you're writing a gospel about the life of Jesus, it doesn't seem probable that you would want to make a commentary on why people came out to see him. But he did. He took the time to do it. And what it tells me is that these people were chasing something but not necessarily him. They didn't even really know him. They didn't know his heart, didn't know his mission, didn't know his teaching. It wasn't about him. It was about what he did. They saw this resurrection take place and thought something might be up. Now, if you know the context of the scene here, you know that it was even a bigger deal than it appears on the surface. Let me set the stage for you. As you could tell in the passage, one of their national holidays was going on. It's called Passover. And Passover for them is like 4th of July for us. On 4th of July, we blow up rockets and all this to celebrate our liberation from England. We became our own country. Well, the Jews, Israel, they were captives in Egypt centuries before. And God, through Moses, if you've ever seen that movie, 10 Commandments, God uses Moses and does all these amazing miracles to free them from slavery in Egypt, brings them back up to their own promised land. So they celebrate that Passover, that delivery from occupation every year. And when they get together, they work themselves up into a frenzy of nationalism, waiting for that Messiah to come back. In fact, if you've ever been to Israel, every Friday night as the Sabbath is coming in, hundreds and thousands still gather at what remains of the temple there, the Western Wall or the Wailing Wall, and they do it all over again. There's hope. They work themselves up in that hope. Now, imagine that frenzy's going on, that celebration's happening in Israel, and then they get word that a dude raised another dude from the dead. He's here! This is the one! We've been waiting for this guy for centuries, and then they come out with their palm branches, and Jesus is even doing what he was supposed to do, doing the Old Testament prophecy thing of riding in on a colt. They're like, this is definitely it. This is the guy. But as you know, the things of Hosanna and praise God and all those cheers and I'm for yous and you go get 'em, pal stuff that they had on Palm Sunday was quickly replaced in only a matter of days with an angry crucify him. Crucify him. What happened? And what does that have to do with hope? Jesus gets into town, he starts talking about how a seed has to die before it gives life to a bunch of other things. Starts talking about his own death and how he will die. And the people are going, this doesn't fit. You ever heard that phrase? You ever heard somebody say, my God would never blank? Well, what they're saying would be, my God would never die. He would never talk like this. Even Judas, one of his own 12, said, I'm done, I'm out of here. Here's the key, folks, and we have to grab this because this is one way that our enemy wants to take our hope. These people did not have their hope in him. They had their hope in what he could do for them. Right? And when that thing that they wanted out of him died, their hope in him died, and they missed resurrection. That'll preach. That's grabbing all of us right where we are. Because we face a similar choice, don't we? We have life going on, stuff happens, it hurts. We ask, my God, would he ever do this? Isn't he a loving God? And we go through these gymnastics and we're wondering, are we going to hold on to faith? And people say, I just lost my faith and I just lost my hope. Interesting little quote here from Friedrich Nietzsche that I put in here, and I'll tell you why I put it in here in a minute, but let me just read it. Nietzsche, knowing how dangerous of an emotion this thing called hope is, says this: it is in reality the worst of all evils, hope. Worst of all evils. Why? Because it prolongs the torments of man. Here's a guy who's experienced life. He's experienced hope. He's been crushed by the weight of hope being lost and said it's better off to have never hoped before. That's actually a very honest and real statement. If there was nothing to hope in that was imperishable. And it makes a lot of sense also for those of us who put our hope in things that are perishable, that do have a shelf life, that don't have a guarantee. I'll throw out a couple of examples. If my hope is in my job and I lose my job, ow. Now, a job's valuable, job's important, but if our hope was in the job, there's no guarantee from God or anybody that your job's going to be there forever, right? So if you've placed your hope in something that's perishable that could end, you might as well have never hoped. Retirement, health, relationships, betrayal comes into your life. Where was the hope? If there's a perishable that we've placed our faith in, that we've put our hope in, then hope is a horrible thing. But Jesus did not come to set up a perishable hope. Jesus actually went on into the one thing that could kill hope and beat it. He went into death, all the way into death. Death is the result of sin. He went into death so that he could beat it, so that not even death could beat him or anybody that's in him, is raised back to life, so that our hope is in something that will never be moved, ever. And he's saying, folks, you've got a choice. You can put your hope in the perishable things of which there's no guarantee, or you can hope in me who has been through death and come back the other side. Because we're all going to have moments of death. We're all going to have those times when things are lost and pain is experienced and discouragement is strong. And Jesus says, don't be like the people that cheered for a while then bailed. Be like the Mary and the Martha and the others who came to the tomb looking, because I said I would rise again. And hold on. Never give up. Put your faith in him alone and nothing else. How do we persevere? That's the second one here. Keep your hope in Jesus alive. Starts with keep it in him alone, because if there's anything else, we're setting ourselves up for failure. We're setting ourselves up for discouragement, setting ourselves up to be disillusioned with who God is. But now let's keep our hope in Jesus alive. 2 verses here that are basically spiritual life preservers when death hits your life. The first one, Romans 8:28. I love this. In all things, God works for the good of those who love him. In all things, God works for the good who love him. All things. All things. Even yucky things. Now, quite honestly, I'll admit to you, this verse can appear somewhat insensitive if there's a hurt going on with somebody. But it's also the most hopeful thing that can ever be declared. It's us saying, God, you didn't create this evil. You didn't bring about this evil. But you've told me that even the evil that was brought on you was used for the good. God turned our crucifying Jesus into him saving us. If he can do that, he can take anything that befalls us and turn it into power and beauty for his glory and our joy. He can do that. He can do all things. And then finally, you can claim what Paul claimed in Philippians chapter 3. I want to know Christ and experience the mighty power that raised him from the dead. And it's great how these two things work together. Over here, we're saying, just take it. You can do anything. You can work for the good in any situation. And by the way, that power that raised you from the dead, Jesus, I could use some right now. I want to experience it. I want to experience your resurrection power. I want you to bring, you said you major in resurrection, bring life out of this death that I'm experiencing. And you can do it. You can make all things work together for my good. We hold on to those. We memorize them. We put them, tape them to our face if we have to to be able to keep that hope in Jesus alive during that Friday 3 o'clock through Sunday morning period of life that is certain to come. I've got a friend in South Africa. He's one of our ministry partners. His name is Michael Hale. Michael's a great, great guy. About a number of years ago, he met this scrappy little girl named Lucia. And he met her in the school system in a pretty interesting situation. She was a scrappy girl, was in a fight, and he asked to, help and try to get with her parents and try to work on her behavior. Well, found out that she was a 12-year-old gal who had 2 brothers at home and no parents. She was the parent. No wonder she's scrappy. She's a survivor. Ends up sharing the gospel with little Lucia. She changes into one of the most beautiful people on the planet. In fact, here's a picture of her up on the screen at a place in South Africa called the Gap, and that's where she was baptized. In fact, that was the day of her baptism. And those of you that have been to South Africa and know Lucia know just to be within 10 feet of her is to feel a rainbow. A rainbow is the sign of hope. A rainbow was her favorite thing to take pictures of. She would take pictures of rainbows all the time, post them up on Facebook. She just radiated hope. One of her favorite songs was a song that we sing here called Your Love Never Fails. Powerful song. We sang it last week even. Your love never fails. And she was with Michael that day. He had adopted her and basically become her dad, taking good care of her. Earlier in the day, the two of them were singing that song together, just worshiping. And later that day, she leaves him and goes out to the Gap to hang out with a friend, that place where she was baptized. And while she was sitting on the beach area, there's rocks, but that's kind of the area. A freak wave comes and grabs her and pulls them into the water. A year ago, this past Friday, pulls her into the water. Michael gets the call. Search and rescue is on to try to find these 2 girls. Michael has a boat. That's one of the things that he does. He's done the rescue thing many times. I got to communicate with him this week, and he said, from the time I got the call until we gave up the search, we found the other girl. We did not find Lucia. He said, I just kept singing the words to this song. I didn't stop. I want you to catch these words and consider Lucia, who's in the ocean. The wind is strong and the water is deep, but I'm not alone here in these open seas because your love never fails. The chasm is far too wide. I never thought I'd reach the other side, but your love never fails. No body for her was found. If you see there's another picture up here I would love for you to see. It was interesting that they actually used a photo, one of her photos on Facebook of a rainbow to communicate her loss. A gal said, any news about her? God, why her? And then the last post is, we just lost her. And all of a sudden, Michael is in that same spot that we're in when these things happen. Am I going to be like the crowd that bails when things don't go their way, or am I going to be a Mary? That even in the dark hours of the morning, I am still going to the tomb and waiting for life to come out. Michael said he did not quit singing that song. And the song says, you stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. And then the chant that he said that he's saying over and over is, you make all things work together for my good. You make all things work together for my good. You make all things work together for my good. a number of friends of Lucia and ministry partners gathered together up on the cliff overlooking the ocean where she was taken for her funeral. 7-hour worship service of singing praise to God, of declaring his goodness, telling stories about what God had done in Lucia. One of the things that he'd done was caused her on her last day to post on Facebook the phrase, "Lord, make something beautiful out of me." The day she perished, "Lord, make something beautiful out of me." So they're celebrating that. They're celebrating her life. It was a dark and dreary, rainy, ugly day for them to be worshiping, except for one little 30-minute window in the middle of their worship time. I want you to see what God decided to do in the middle of their worship. Sean Collin was there, our Impact pastor, Global Impact, and he said, "Brian," he said, "it's like he just cut a little niche out of the rest of the world and said, I'm alive. Make something beautiful out of me." He still is. Jesus majors in resurrection. He brings life out of death, and he wants to be your hope. We're going to sing that same song with Michael and all of the friends. And I invite you to take your death spot, put it in the hands of God, and tell him, "You make all things work together for my good." Keep your hope in Jesus alone. Through his power, keep your hope in him alive. And then finally, you've got one blank left. Share that hope with Jesus, in Jesus with someone else this week. Next week is the biggest celebration of his resurrection major of the entire year. And you've been praying for someone. If you've been a part of this all in, you've got names up on the wall, people you've been praying for. If you've been praying for them, you can expect God to have been doing something in their life. Invite him to come and taste a hope that never, ever fails. Thanks for persevering this morning. God bless you for coming. God, thanks for being with us online. We'll see you together next week. Bless you.